10 wildest factory-built muscle cars over the quarter mile. All right, muscle fans, buckle up. American muscle was never subtle, big engines, big noise, but some factory-built monsters pushed things so far they felt illegal. These weren't tuner builds or backyard specials. These were showroom-stock beasts that could vaporize tires, humble supercars, and rewrite the quarter-mile rulebook the moment you drop the hammer. And trust me, the #1 spot will leave you questioning how it was ever sold to the public. Let's dive in. 10. 2018 Dodge Challenger SRT Demon. It started as a factory experiment, a street-legal brute that Chrysler engineers quietly shaped into something the NHRA practically refused to acknowledge. A car born from a normal showroom lineup, yet tuned with the kind of intent you normally see in restricted classes. And before we say its name, let's just say this. No modern muscle car has ever scared its own corporate lawyers quite like this one. What rolled out in 2018 wasn't designed for daily commutes or gentle weekend cruises. It carried a supercharged 6.2-liter V8 that pushed 840 horsepower and 770 pound-feet of torque when fed the right race fuel. That combination launched it from 0 to 60 in a staggering 2.3 seconds, a number that stepped into supercar territory without bothering to knock. And on the quarter mile, 9.65 seconds straight off the showroom floor. No bolt-ons, no tuning, just factory madness. But the wild part isn't just the numbers, it's how it got them. A trans brake hidden inside an automatic, a drag mode suspension, and skinny front drag radials that looked more like they belonged in the pits than on a dealership lot. It even pulled a certified wheelie, a production car, lifting its front tires. That alone made purists whisper and regulators sweat. Still, even monsters have weak spots. That outrageous speed relied heavily on ideal conditions and the right fuel mix. Run it on 91 octane, and it felt noticeably tamer. Its hefty weight didn't help on tight roads, and cooling issues showed up during repeated hard runs. But maybe that was the point. This wasn't built to be civilized. It was created to do one thing with brutal commitment: erase the quarter mile faster than anything wearing license plates had any right to. And if this is number 10, you might want to brace yourself for what comes next. 9. 2023 Dodge Challenger Demon 170. It arrived like the final chapter of an era, one last swing from a company determined to leave scorch marks on the pavement before stepping away from big displacement insanity. And before we say its name, just know this: no factory muscle car has ever launched so violently that drivers joked about needing medical insurance for their spine afterward. That alone should tell you what kind of thunder is coming. The 2023 Dodge Challenger Demon 170 took the familiar 6.2-liter Hemi and transformed it into something unrecognizable. On E85, its supercharger pushed out a monstrous 1,025 horsepower and 945 pound-feet of torque. Numbers that didn't creep past the competition, they erased it. This thing hit 0 to 60 in 1.66 seconds. So quick it felt like the world jumped backward. And over the quarter mile, it delivered the kind of time that once belonged only to full-blown drag cars. 8.91 seconds at 151 miles per hour. A street-legal, warranty-backed production car running eights. But what made it truly unsettling was the engineering hiding underneath. Dodge revamped the fuel system, crank, drive shaft, and rear end to survive the chaos. The suspension squatted like it was bracing for an explosion, and the launch was so aggressive, it felt more like being fired down the strip than accelerating. It didn't move, it attacked. Of course, even monsters have limits. On regular pump gas, it lost some of its madness. Street driving could feel punishing, and without sticky prep, that power just liquefied the tires. And then there's the rarity. Most fans would never even see one outside a YouTube thumbnail. Still, nothing diminishes what it represents. The loudest, wildest farewell to American muscle ever put in showrooms. If you're enjoying this content, smash the like button and subscribe for more car videos. And if number 9 feels this unhinged, what follows only gets more unpredictable. 8. 2020 Ford Mustang Shelby GT 500 DCT. It came from a lineage known for brute force, yet this one carried a kind of precision that felt almost suspicious. Like someone at Ford decided the last pony standing shouldn't just be powerful, it should be unnervingly sharp. And before the badge is said out loud, here's your clue. This was the first muscle car that could intimidate supercars, not with raw chaos, but with calculation. The 2020 Ford Mustang Shelby GT 500 didn't lean on nostalgia or old-school charm. It arrived with a hand-built 5.2-liter supercharged V8 pushing 760 horsepower and 625 pound-feet of torque, numbers that were outrageous on their own. But what really rewrote the script was the 7-speed dual-clutch transmission, no manual, no lag, just lightning strikes disguised as gear shifts. That setup blasted it from 0 to 60 in about 3.3 seconds and down the quarter mile in roughly 10.6 seconds, making it the quickest factory Mustang ever created. Not the loudest, not the flashiest, just the most lethal when the lights dropped. What made it stand out wasn't brute muscle alone, but how ruthlessly it delivered that muscle. The DCT shifted with a kind of cold precision that almost felt at odds with American tradition, launching the car forward with zero drama and maximum violence. Track junkies worshipped its composure, drag racers respected its consistency. It was the muscle car that decided to grow fangs and sharpen them. Yet even this machine carried a few shadows. With no manual, purists felt betrayed. Its weight made tight corners a constant negotiation, and repeated hard runs pushed cooling systems right to their edge. And despite all its brilliance, it still lived in the long shadow of its louder, more outrageous rivals. But make no mistake, this was the Mustang that proved refinement can be just as terrifying as raw power. And if you want to ride with us through the rest of the list, hit that subscribe button, because the next cars get even wilder. 7. 2020 Chevrolet Camaro. It wasn't built for daily drives or weekend flexing. This one came from a shadowy corner of Chevrolet's playbook, the part where production rules get flexible. And before we bring up its name, here's all you need to know. This was the muscle car so committed to the quarter mile that Chevy didn't even bother making it street legal. That alone separates it from every normal Camaro ever sold. The 2020 Chevrolet Camaro carried the spirit of the late 60s factory drag wars, but with modern brutality. Depending on the configuration, you could get a naturally aspirated 427 cubic inch V8 or a shrieking supercharged 350, each tuned to do one thing: erase the distance between the lights and the traps as fast as class rules would allow. Horsepower ratings weren't officially advertised, but insiders whispered numbers well north of 600 horsepower for the big block setups, and far more when the supercharged variants were unleashed. Quarter-mile times regularly dropped into the mid-8s to low 9s, cementing its status as a factory-built weapon disguised as a limited production collectible, not a commuter, not a showpiece, a purpose. But what made it almost eerie was how focused it was. This wasn't a muscle car trying to be balanced or versatile. It had a single talent, and it pursued that talent with tunnel vision. Everything felt engineered around one violent moment: launch. The chassis braced for war, the suspension squatted aggressively, and the power delivery felt like it was tuned by someone who didn't believe in second chances. It existed purely to embarrass anything foolish enough to line up beside it. Still, its strengths also created its weaknesses. No van meant no road plates. Production was tiny, making it more myth than machine for most fans. And in the hands of anyone without drag strip discipline, it was a quick way to meet a wall. But maybe that danger is part of its appeal: a factory car that demanded respect the moment you touch the throttle. Now here's the real question. If you had the keys to a Copo for one night, would you actually run it or keep it untouched as a collector's trophy? Let us know in the comments. 6. 2015 Dodge Charger Hellcat. It looked like a family sedan that accidentally wandered onto the wrong side of town. 4 doors, big trunk, the kind of car you'd expect to see shuttling kids to school. But underneath that ordinary silhouette lives something far louder, far meaner, and far more unhinged than anyone expected. Before we drop its name, here's the clue. This was the moment Dodge decided even practicality deserved a supercharged nightmare under the hood. The 2015 Dodge Charger Hellcat arrived with a mission to destroy stereotypes. A sedan shouldn't have had a 6.2-liter supercharged Hemi V8, and it definitely shouldn't have unleashed 707 horsepower and 650 pound-feet of torque straight from the factory. Yet there it was, an everyday commuter capable of ripping from 0 to 60 in about 3.7 seconds and storming through the quarter mile in 11 seconds. 4 doors, running 11s. Nothing that looked this sensible had any business being that violent. What made it even wilder was how it delivered that force. The moment the supercharger whined up, the Charger stopped feeling like a sedan and started behaving like a runaway freight train. Long straights vanished in seconds. The rear tires clung on for dear life, and every launch felt like a dare, as if Dodge built it specifically to embarrass anything claiming to be a performance luxury car. It wasn't just fast, it was defiant, the kind of machine born purely to prove a point. Of course, there were cracks in the armor. Its weight made quick direction changes more choreographed than instinctive. fuel economy barely existed. And without perfect traction, that 707 horsepower turned into smoke and noise faster than most drivers expected. But flaws didn't matter, not when the Hellcat delivered a level of absurd power wrapped in such an unassuming shape. This was the sedan that broke the rules, laughed about it, and then did another burnout for good measure. And the muscle cars waiting ahead, they only get more intense. 5. 2017 Dodge Challenger Hellcat. It wore a familiar face, almost comforting in its retro-inspired lines. But don't let that fool you. Behind the calm, almost smug exterior lurked a car that demanded attention the instant you pressed the pedal. And before we say its name, know this. This was the muscle car that reminded everyone Dodge didn't just build fast cars. They built cars that could humiliate nearly anything in their lane. The 2017 Dodge Challenger Hellcat carried forward the legacy of its four-door sibling, but with coupe aggression. Its 6.2-liter supercharged Hemi V8 turned out 707 horsepower and 650 pound-feet of torque, capable of rocketing it from 0 to 60 in roughly 3.6 seconds. Down the quarter mile, it trapped the lights at an astonishing 11.2 seconds, leaving competitors and casual onlookers blinking in disbelief. And remember, this was all straight from the factory. No aftermarket wizardry needed. What made it mesmerizing wasn't just raw output, but the way it presented that power. Drop the hammer and the Hellcat didn't just accelerate, it annihilated the quarter mile with a growl that rattled nerves and a launch that seemed too violent for its size. Every straightaway became a battlefield, every red light a challenge, and every rev a declaration. This wasn't here to play nice, it was here to dominate. Of course, perfection has a price. Its massive weight made nimble handling tricky, especially in corners. Tires could protest under too much throttle, and fuel consumption was absurd, even for a muscle car. But those were small compromises for a machine that made such a commanding statement, an unapologetic monster that combined classic Challenger style with pure, unfiltered aggression. The 2017 Hellcat didn't just remind you what American muscle could do, it dared you to keep up. And if you thought that was intense, buckle in. The next cars on this list raise the stakes even higher. 4. 2021 Dodge Challenger Superstock. It looked calm, almost casual, like a Challenger you might see cruising past your neighborhood without drawing a second glance. But beneath that deceptively simple exterior hid a machine so singular in purpose, it made even the Hellcat look polite. And before we say its name, keep this in mind. This car was built to put anyone who underestimated it on notice, faster than their reaction time could handle. The 2021 Dodge Challenger Superstock carried a 6.2-liter supercharged Hemi V8 tune to 807 horsepower and 707 pound-feet of torque, a slight step up from the Hellcat, but with one very important twist. It was optimized exclusively for the drag strip. That meant a 0 to 60 time of roughly 3.25 seconds and a quarter-mile time of 10.5 seconds at over 131 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest production Challengers ever produced. Factory-built, street-legal, yet frighteningly close to a purpose-built drag car. What made the Superstock unforgettable wasn't just the numbers, it was how effortlessly it delivered them. Every launch was precise, almost surgical, with a trans brake system that allowed drivers to exploit every ounce of power without hesitation. The rear tires dug in as if they had a mind of their own, and the suspension handled the violent weight transfer like a pro athlete bracing for impact. It didn't just go fast, it telegraphed domination from the very first foot. Of course, such specialization had trade-offs. Its focus on straight-line terror made it less nimble in corners. Without ideal traction, all that power could overwhelm the rear tires instantly. In fuel economy, let's just say it's a number you'll never check. But for anyone who cares about one thing, the quarter-mile supremacy, flaws were irrelevant. The 2021 Challenger Superstock wasn't just fast, it was surgical, precise, and unapologetically extreme. And if that made you flinch, wait until we hit number 3. 3. 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda. It looked like a classic muscle car, a car you'd expect to see on posters in teenage bedrooms, but there was a darkness hiding beneath those crisp lines. Before we name it, consider this. This car didn't just compete with the muscle cars of its era, it humiliated them, all while wearing one of the most innocent shapes on the road. The 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda came with a legendary 426 cubic inch Hemi V8, officially rated at 425 horsepower, though insiders knew the real figure was closer to 500 horsepower at the crank. Torque, a monstrous 490 pound-feet, delivered in a raw, unfiltered rush that could launch it from 0 to 60 in around 5.6 seconds. A number that sounds tame today but was blistering in its time. The quarter mile, a staggering 13.1 seconds on skinny tires, at a speed that left many competitors scratching their heads. And remember, this was all from a factory car, no exotic tuning or aftermarket trickery needed. What made the Hemi Cuda unforgettable wasn't just the power, it was the way it handled that fury. Lightweight with perfect weight distribution, it could claw its way down the strip with precision. Drop the hammer and it lunged forward with the kind of urgency that left spectators cheering and rivals panicking. It was audacious, unapologetic, and very aware of its own capability. Of course, nothing that extreme comes without compromise. Its bias-ply tires required careful management. Steering could feel twitchy at high speeds, and braking needed respect. But those were minor details in a machine designed to dominate in a straight line and terrify anyone foolish enough to challenge it. The 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda didn't just make a statement, it defined an era of muscle, raw and unrelenting. If you're loving these insane factory beasts so far, hit that subscribe button, because the top two cars on this list are next level terrifying. 2. 1969 Chevrolet Camaro 427 ZL1. It started as a Chevrolet Camaro, seemingly normal in its lines and proportions, a car that could be mistaken for just another pony car on the street. But beneath that familiar exterior, engineers were quietly crafting one of the most infamous drag-ready machines ever produced. This was a car designed to scare other racers before it even left the starting line. The 1969 Chevrolet Camaro 427 ZL1 carried an aluminum 427 cubic inch V8, officially rated at 430 horsepower, though real-world figures often top 500 horsepower. Torque was monstrous for its size, around 460 pound-feet, and it could hit 0 to 60 in roughly 5.5 seconds, with quarter-mile times dipping to 13 seconds on period tires. For a car straight from the factory, these numbers were terrifying, especially considering the limited weight-saving tricks used in its construction. What set the ZL1 apart wasn't just the engine, it was the intent. Chevrolet deliberately engineered this Camaro to dominate NHRA stock and super stock classes, making it a car for serious racers who didn't want to tinker or cheat. The suspension, brakes, and drivetrain were all tuned for one purpose: absolute domination in a straight line, while still technically being street legal. Every inch of its chassis communicated aggression, even when parked silently on a showroom floor. Of course, such focused engineering meant compromises. Ride quality was harsh, handling could feel twitchy on tight turns, and cooling under sustained runs was critical. But all of that seemed trivial when the car could torch the quarter mile faster than almost anything else available to the public. The 1969 Camaro 427 ZL1 wasn't just a car, it was a statement. American muscle, uncompromising, and built to make legends on the strip. And as we reach the final car on this list, the stakes only get higher. 1. 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona 426 Hemi. It looked like a car designed for high-speed NASCAR straights, a long nose, tall rear wing, and an attitude that screamed racetrack. But this wasn't just a racing prototype. It was a factory production car you could technically buy and drive on the street. And yet anyone who underestimated it quickly learned that it wasn't built for neighborhoods, it was built to terrorize quarter miles. The 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona 426 Hemi were a 426 cubic inch Hemi V8, officially rated at 425 horsepower. But in reality, many were producing closer to 500 horsepower at the crank. Torque, a monstrous 490 pound-feet, ready to shove the car down the strip with authority. That power, combined with its aerodynamic nose cone and towering rear wing, allowed it to rocket from 0 to 60 in roughly 5.3 seconds and blast through the quarter mile in around 12.4 seconds on period tires. For a car of its size, this was sheer unbridled force. What made the Daytona legendary wasn't just raw power, it was the way it leveraged aerodynamics years ahead of its time. Every surface, every contour, every wing was engineered to slice through air and plant the car firmly on the ground. On the drag strip, it could outrun and outstraight any muscle car daring to challenge it. It wasn't just fast, it was purposeful, almost surgical in its attack. Of course, perfection had limits. Its handling in tight corners was cumbersome, The massive rear wing could make low-speed driving feel awkward, and it demanded respect from any driver willing to tame it. But these compromises were trivial compared to the raw spectacle of its straight-line dominance. The 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona 426 Hemi didn't just close the list, it ended it with a roar. A reminder that when American muscle went extreme, it didn't just push limits, it obliterated them. Which one of these factory beasts would you dare to take to the strip at midnight? No polish, no hype, just raw, unfiltered muscle? Drop your pick in the comments. I want to see who you think could steal the crown. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button because the next video uncovers even stranger, more secretive muscle cars, machines so wild they almost didn't make it to showrooms. Stick around. The underground legends are just getting started.